These rare asylum photos document the final moments before the wards were abandoned. What followed was silence. This is Panic Files. Behind every abandoned asylum photo is a place where time stopped and suffering was left behind. This documentary explores haunting asylum photographs that reveal forgotten institutions, disturbing treatments, and spaces abandoned, left to decay in silence. 1. Asylums were built as cities of isolation. And this is where the story really begins. Most people picture asylums as single buildings, but the photos tell a different truth. These places were cities, entire self-contained worlds built far from towns, hidden beyond tree lines and empty roads. Isolation wasn't accidental, it was the design. Many asylums had their own farms, kitchens, power systems, and cemeteries. Patients weren't meant to leave. Some arrived as teenagers and died decades later without ever stepping back into society. When you look at wide exterior shots, the scale is overwhelming. Long wings, endless windows, structures stretching into the distance. That size mattered. It made people feel small, replaceable, lost inside architecture that never stopped watching. And when these institutions shut down, they didn't empty overnight. They bled out slowly. One ward at a time, one hallway at a time. The photos capture that moment after purpose disappeared, but before nature fully reclaimed the space. No movement, no voices, just buildings still standing, waiting for people who never came back. When you realize these weren't hospitals, but lifelong holding zones, the images hit differently. Would you have noticed if everyone inside simply vanished? 2. Long corridors that never end. And then there are the hallways. Almost every abandoned asylum photo includes one, a corridor stretching so far it seems to bend, floors cracked, paint peeling, door after identical door lining both sides. These corridors weren't just for movement, they were in control. Straight lines, clear sight, nowhere to hide. When photographed empty, they feel wrong, like the building itself is still watching. The unsettling part isn't what you see, it's what you don't hear. No footsteps, no carts rolling, no voices echoing, just silence hanging heavy in the air. Photographers often frame these shots dead center, pulling your eyes forward until the hallway disappears into darkness. It creates a question your brain can't answer. Where does it end? And more importantly, how many people walked this path and never came back the same? 3. Rusted hospital beds, frozen in time. This is where the photos start to feel personal. Rows of metal hospital beds, bent frames, springs exposed. Mattresses are long gone or collapsed into dust. Some lined up perfectly, others overturned like someone left in a hurry. These beds once held hundreds, sometimes thousands of patients at the same time. Overcrowding was common, privacy didn't exist, and decades later, the beds remain exactly where they were left. Dust blankets everything, ceilings sag overhead, paint curls off the walls like old skin. Nothing here was cleaned. Nothing was prepared for closure. In slideshow form, slow pans across these beds feel almost intrusive, like you're standing somewhere you weren't invited. Each frame begs the same question: who slept here, and how long did they stay? 4. Wheelchairs abandoned mid-hallway. And then you notice the wheelchairs, not pushed into corners, not stored away, just left, sitting in the middle of the hallways as if someone had stood up and never came back. Wheelchairs are different from beds. Beds stay put. Wheelchairs imply movement, progress, independence. That's why these images hit so hard. Centered in corridors covered in rust, tires flat. They feel like punctuation marks in a sentence that was never finished. There's no need to explain these photos. The silence does the work. All narration should do here is step back and let the image breathe. What would you think if you found this alone? 5. Restraint chairs and forgotten treatment tools. And here's where it gets heavier. Restraint chairs, leather straps, iron fixtures bolted to floors. These weren't movie props. They were standard equipment. The photos don't need graphic detail. The atmosphere says enough. Wood cracked with age, metal eaten away by rust, straps stiff and brittle, frozen mid-loop. These tools reflect a time when control mattered more than care. when silence was considered treatment, and when fear was mistaken for order. In slideshow format, these images demand time. 5 seconds feels short. 10 seconds feels uncomfortable. That's the point. History doesn't scream here, it just sits quietly, waiting to be noticed. 6. Padded rooms that no longer protect anyone. Padded rooms were meant to prevent harm. That was the idea. Now, they're some of the most disturbing spaces to photograph. Padding torn open, walls exposed, foam hanging loose like ripped fabric. The irony is impossible to ignore. Rooms designed for safety now look violent themselves. Claustrophobic, suffocating. Light barely enters. Sound feels trapped. In still images, these rooms feel smaller than they are, like the walls are closing in even when nothing moves. This section doesn't need many words. The slower the narration, the stronger the impact. Would you last 5 minutes here, alone? 7. Abandoned operating and therapy rooms. Just when you think it can't feel colder, you reach the treatment rooms. Operating tables sit beneath broken lights. Cabinets hang open, tiles cracked and stained by time. No blood, no drama, just abandonment. These rooms once represented help, intervention, change. Now they feel clinical in the worst way, empty of purpose. Photographs here work best when nothing is explained. No speculation, no horror language, just documentation. Because sometimes reality is unsettling enough. 8. Children's wards and left-behind toys. This is the hardest section to sit with. Small beds, chalkboards, toys left where they fell, shoes beneath cots, spaces built for children who never got a choice. The photos don't exaggerate. They don't need to. Innocence and abandonment don't belong together, and your brain knows it instantly. Because this isn't shocking. It's quiet, and that makes it worse. 9. Staircases leading nowhere. Staircases show up everywhere in asylum photography. Crumbling steps, railings rusted through, floors collapsing beneath them. These were meant to move people upward, forward. Now they lead nowhere. They're perfect transitional images. Movement without destination, escape without exit. Every staircase feels like a question that was never answered. 10. Patient records, files, and name tags. And then you see the paperwork. Folders scattered across floors, name tags without faces. Records are yellowed and torn. The system remembered them, even when the world didn't. These artifacts humanize everything without showing a single person. No names need to be read. The presence alone is enough. Lives reduced to files, stories left unfinished. In photos, these details are small but emotionally heavy. 11. Rusted doors, bars, and locked cells. Heavy doors, iron bars, thick hinges that still look impossible to force open. Close-up shots of locks say more than wide angles ever could. These weren't suggestions, they were final decisions. Even now, decades later, the doors remain closed, and somehow, that feels intentional. 12. Mirrors, bathrooms, and decay. Cracked mirrors reflect warped versions of empty rooms. Tiles missing. Sinks broken. Bathrooms are intimate spaces. Seeing them abandoned feels invasive. Reflections distort, light fractures. Nothing looks quite real anymore. The unease comes quietly here. No need to push it. 13. Abandoned staff offices and nurses' stations. Not every haunting image comes from patient spaces. Staff offices sit abandoned too. Desks still facing windows, chairs pushed halfway back, clipboards left behind, coffee cups turned to dust. These rooms feel different, less chaotic, more controlled, but that contrast makes them unsettling. These were the spaces where decisions were made, where charts were read, where orders were given and followed. Now they're empty, stripped of authority, reduced to quiet rooms with no one left to answer for what happened here. In photos, these offices feel frozen mid-thought, like everyone just stood up and never came back. 14. Asylum cemeteries and unmarked graves. And then there's what lies outside the walls. Many asylums had their own cemeteries, rows of small markers, some numbered. Many are unmarked entirely. No names, no dates, just ground. Photos of these burial sites are often calm, peaceful even. That's what makes them so disturbing. Thousands of patients were buried here, sometimes without family ever knowing where they ended up. Some were never claimed, others were forgotten. The buildings may still stand, but these graves are the real proof that these places were never temporary. They were final. When the camera lingers here, the silence feels earned. 15. The last locked gate, where the world ends. The final image is usually outside. A rusted gate, a broken fence, a road leading away from the complex, cracked and overgrown. This was the line between inside and outside, between forgotten and free. Photos of these exits feel heavier than entrances because they show where people didn't go. The gate still stands, locked, bent, covered in vines. No guards, no patients, no staff, just a boundary that outlived its purpose. And when the image fades, you realize something uncomfortable. The asylums didn't disappear. They were simply left behind. These final images don't scream. They whisper. And that's what makes them impossible to forget. Empty rooms, unmarked graves, locked exits to nowhere. So what do you think? Are these places warnings from the past? Or mirrors we'd rather not look into? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe, because Panic Files isn't done yet.